Introduction to Entomology, the study of insects. Welcome, Florida Master Gardener volunteer trainees, to this module on the Introduction to Entomology, the study of insects. Our learning objectives for this module will be to get to know the general characteristics of arthropods, to be able to describe insect development, both complete and incomplete metamorphosis, to know the basic insect anatomy, to describe insect mouth parts and the plant damage they cause, to be able to recognize some common landscape pests, and to be able to recognize some common beneficial insects. But before we begin, think to yourself and be ready to share a bug story when you're next in the classroom. Describe an encounter you've had with a bug in your yard. Did you attempt to identify the critter? Did you ignore it or control it? All organisms are classified, organized, and named in increasingly smaller groups. This is called taxonomy. Here we see two examples, one from the kingdom Plantae, all the plants, and one from the kingdom Animalia, all the animals. When you go below kingdom, the next level is the phylum. Here, within the plants, we're looking at the Magnolia phyta, the animals, the arthropoda. Then it goes down to the class. We'll be concerned here with insects. Then it goes down to the Hemiptera, a certain order of insects. Below that will be the family. Notice the difference in the ending of the family name for plants versus animals. Then go down to the genus, and finally the genus and species. So here we come, the common cinch bug, Blissus insularis, or the Cherokee rose, Rosa levigata. Insects, the main focus of this presentation, belong to the phylum Arthropoda, which means joint appendage. Anthro means jointed, poda means appendage. And here you can see the different portions of this appendage with the joints in between them. Besides insects, the phylum Arthropoda includes mites, ticks, centipedes or spiders, myriapods like centipedes and millipedes, and crustaceans. Roly-poly, or the pill bug, is one of the terrestrial crustaceans. Most are aquatic, such as shrimp, crabs, lobsters, etc. So now looking at the phylum Arthropoda or Arthropoda, these are insects, crustaceans, mites, ticks, and spiders. All share some key traits. They have bilateral symmetry, they have a segmented body, they have paired joint appendages, they have a chitinous exoskeleton, a ventral nerve cord, and an open circulatory system. Here's an example of bilateral symmetry. Note, if you run a center line down through the middle of the insect, the left half is a mirror image of the right half. That indicates bilateral symmetry. They have a segmented body. Insects have three body segments: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Spiders have two body segments. Centipedes have many body segments. The third characteristic was paired jointed legs. This would be one pair, a second pair, a third pair. And here we see labels for the different parts of those jointed legs. Fourthly, they have a hard chitinous exoskeleton, which is shed and renewed as the animal grows. Here we see the newly molting insect coming out of its previous shell, and this shell is chitin. They have a simple central nervous system, which consists of a tiny brain and a nerve cord with clusters of nerve cells called ganglia. So here we see the brain, different ganglia throughout the body, and coming off on these black lines represent individual nerves, which are made up of dendrites, cell body, axon, and synapse. They have an open circulatory system. There are no veins or arteries. Blood is held in a dorsal tubular structure with lateral openings in the abdomen, which we see the dorsal tubular structure running here, with other parts coming off of that, especially in the abdomen. So in review, all arthropods share these characteristics: bilateral symmetry, a segmented body, paired jointed legs, a chitinous exoskeleton, a central nervous system, and an open circulatory system. Moving on to part 2, the insects. Insects preceded humans on the earth by 350 million years. They dominate the animal kingdom. They represent more than half of all known living organisms, and there are millions of species of insects in the world. It is the most diverse group of animals. So let's look at the relationship of insects to humans. They can be either injurious or beneficial. Injurious insects feed on plants, on stored foods, wood, fabric, even humans and animals. Beneficially, they pollinate our plants. They decompose rotting material, organic material. They aerate the soil. They offer biocontrol of weeds and damaging bugs. They're a food source for many animals. They provide products like honey and silk. They have medical uses and aesthetic qualities. Think of the butterflies. There are over 13,000 species of insects known in Florida, with new species appearing almost daily because of the imports into Florida's ports. Of all the insect species in the world, less than 1% can be considered to be pests. The rest, greater than 99%, are beneficial or just coexist with each other and ourselves. Insects go through many changes as they mature. In some species, immature insects look nothing like the adults. This would be called complete metamorphosis: egg, larvae, pupa, adult. We see here on the right side: eggs, larvae, pupa, and adult. In other species, the immature insects look similar to the adults, and this would be incomplete metamorphosis. Here we have eggs, a nymph. There can be several nymphal stages called instars, and finally the adult. And here the nymphal stages are very similar looking to the adult stage. Both types of insect development begin at the egg stage. So metamorphosis is the process of change from egg to adult. Can be incomplete or complete. Here we see the life cycle of the mole cricket. It is incomplete, gradual, or simple metamorphosis. The nymphs, each of these is a different instar, a different nymphal stage. They look very similar to the adult here. Growth occurs through molding, where the newly increased size-wise, more mature individual leaves the previous chitinous exoskeleton behind and makes a new one. Examples of this are mole crickets, chinch bugs, grasshoppers, aphids, and cockroaches. Here we see the life cycle of the oleander caterpillar. This is complete metamorphosis. First you have eggs. We see eggs here, some young larvae here and here. This would be a more mature larvae, it's larger. A pupa right here, and then the adult moth. So your first activity using your student manual is to complete activity number 1. Next, we'll turn to insect anatomy. Remember, in insects, there are 3 usually distinct body regions: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. There's 1 pair of segmented antennae, 3 pairs of legs, and usually 1 or 2 pair of wings as adults, sometimes none. Let's compare insects to mites, which are also arthropods. Insects have 1 pair of antennae, mites have none. Insects have 3 body regions, mites have 2. Insects have 3 pairs of legs, mites have 4. Insects are the only class of arthropods to have evolved wings. Mites have no wings. Here's the head, functions mainly for feeding and sensory perception. You can see the antennae attached here. The thorax, that middle region, is responsible for locomotion and contains 3 segments, each with a pair of legs. 1, 2, 3, and they're paired. The abdomen's function is excretion and reproduction. Here. So how do insects feed? If we know something about insect mouthparts and the damage they can do, this can aid in identification when the insect that is doing the damage is not present. Plant damaging insects have either chewing or piercing sucking mouthparts. These would be mouthparts in here. So first, let's look at chewing mouthparts. Chewing mouthparts are used to tear off and eat pieces of plant tissue, sort of like mandibles, the appearance of mandibles. These are the most common mouthparts. They're present in caterpillars, beetles, and grasshoppers. And if you look closely at this image, you can see how the leaves have been torn. Parts of the leaf blade have been torn away. New damage with chewing mouthparts is called skeletonizing, which we see here. This is from immature chewing insects. When time passes and this becomes old damage, the clue you see is there dried up edges and chewed areas of the leaf. Mouthparts of young larvae are not mature enough to chew, so feeding is done by skeletonizing, which is what we see here, or scraping the leaf tissue. Take action when skeletonizing is first noted. Often an entire insect infestation can be nipped in the bud by just removing 1 or 2 affected leaves and destroying the larvae. Stomping them works well. On the other hand, when chewing is apparent, examine the margins of the affected areas. If the tissue is dry, the damage is old and the insect is probably long gone, which is what we see here on the right. Then we have the piercing, sucking mouthparts. These are needle-like mouthparts that pierce plant tissue and suck plant juices. This would be the piercing portion here. This is found in mites, aphids, whiteflies, true bugs, scales, and others. The feeding damage is called stippling. Looking at the spots, the small spots here, can cause leaf distortions, which we see curled leaves here, and can also cause fruit damage. Additionally, this can be a vector for diseases. Some piercing sucking insects, namely whiteflies, soft scales, mealybugs, and aphids, excrete a sugary substance called honeydew as they feed on plants. An unsightly black fungus called sooty mold grows on the honeydew. Sooty mold does not infect the plants, but besides being unattractive, it may interfere with photosynthesis, reduce plant growth, and cause early leaf drop. Sooty mold usually weathers away after an insect infestation is controlled. Ants also feed on honeydew and will farm piercing sucking insects by moving them from plant to plant and by defending them against predators. If ants are crawling on plants, examine the leaves and stems for piercing sucking pests. So here we see examples of sooty mold, the blackness on the leaves here and here. And here we see ants feeding on aphid honeydew. Some insects have different mouth parts that can be used for siphoning, like the proboscis of a moth or a butterfly. It acts like a straw to draw up liquids. Curled up, we see it here. Straight, we see it here. And then there are sponging mouth parts, such as with the housefly. And here insects secrete saliva that liquefies food, and the mouth parts act like a sponge to absorb the food. If you see a housefly land somewhere, you notice that it'll put its mouth parts down, it'll touch periodically the substrate, and if there's something good for it, it'll stay in place for a period of time. Part 3, common pests and beneficials, and here I'll note that the turf insect pests are covered in the turf module. Here we'll be looking at pest insects and mites. So activity 2, mouth parts. So refer to activity number 2 in the student manual. And as I present the following common pest, note how each feeds by circling the correct mouth part. First, we'll be looking at piercing sucking mouth parts. Aphids are soft-bodied, pear-shaped insects, generally less than 1/8 inch long. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts and are found feeding on tender new growth and sometimes flower buds. Large colonies can turn leaves yellow and stunt shoots. Some aphid species inject a toxin into plants, which causes leaves to curl and distort. The damage caused by aphid colonies is mainly aesthetic due to the large amounts of sticky honeydew produced and the resulting black sooty mold. During most of the year in Florida, aphids give birth to living young. There's no egg stage. Common aphids found on landscape plants include the crepe myrtle aphid, the oleander aphid, and the oleander aphid. So here we see aphids, a close-up. Note the cupped leaves. Shiny honeydew, white molded skins, and sooty mold beginning to form on the top of the leaves. Lace bugs are so called because of the lace-like appearance of their wings. They're also piercing, sucking mouth parts. The wings, which are held horizontally over their back. Adults between 1/8 and 1/4 inch long are typically found feeding on the underside of leaves. Shiny, varnish-like specks of excrement are left behind, which we see here. Damage appears as stippling or silvering of the upper leaf surface. This damage will persist even after lace bugs are gone. While new growth will appear healthy, most species are host-specific and are commonly found on plants such as azalea, sycamore, lantana, and avocado. Here's an example of the stippling on these leaves. Mealybugs are soft-bodied, mobile insects that infest a wide range of plants. They cover their bodies in white, cottony wax. Some mealybugs, like the long-tailed mealybug below, produce a fringe layer around their body. They can infest all parts of a plant, including roots, root crowns, stems, twigs, leaves, flowers, and fruits. Damage often results in discoloration, wilting, and deformity. Mealybugs excrete honeydew, which can result in black sooty mold growth. Common mealybugs include long-tailed mealybug, citrus mealybug, and citrus mealybug. Thrips. Thrips adults are slender, less than 1/16 of an inch in length, and are difficult to see without magnification. Their colors range from pale yellow to darker brown, and they have slender wings fringed with fine hairs called setae. Thrips cause damage by scraping and feeding on the outer cell layer of leaves. This results in silvering, bronzing, leaf distortion, and translucent portions of dead tissue called window painting. Tiny spots of dark brown excrement on the leaf surface often accompany the damage. Flower thrips cause significant petal and bud scarring, distortion, and discoloration. Some thrips also transmit plant viruses. Most thrips adults are less than 1/16 of an inch in length, and a nymph may not be visible without magnification. Definite bud scarring and distortion here. Discoloration. Whiteflies are a common pest of many ornamental plants throughout Florida. Although an infestation does not always require treatment, it is important to be able to identify and monitor these pests. Whiteflies have piercing, sucking mouthparts. The top sides of leaves on infested plants become pale or spotted as the insects feed on the undersides. They secrete honeydew, which promotes black sooty mold. Some whitefly species can cause greater damage by transmitting plant viruses. Due to their small size and obscure behavior, whitefly infestations may go unnoticed until leaves turn yellow or drop unexpectedly, or until an infested plant is disturbed and small clouds of adult whiteflies emerge from it. It's the nymphs that feed here, and here is a non-feeding adult. On the underside of the leaves is where they're found. Some caterpillar pests of landscape plants. The azalea caterpillar, Datana major, is found in Florida from July through October on azaleas, which are rhododendron species. Often the caterpillars completely defoliate much of the plant before they are detected. While the caterpillar appears hairy, it is harmless to humans and can be picked off the bushes by hand. The caterpillar is found in north and central Florida as far south as Polk and Hillsborough counties. The rhododendron species and azaleas are the only known host in Florida. The palmleaf skeletonizer here. This is the larvae of this insect mine in groups on both the upper and lower surfaces of older leaves under webs of silk. Excrement from the larvae is deposited on top of the silk. There may be up to 5 generations per year. Cutting and bagging or burning infested leaves is an effective method of control. The oleander caterpillar is a bright orange caterpillar with tufts of long black non-stinging hairs. It is a common sight on oleanders in Florida and can cause considerable damage. Fall webworms is a pest of a number of ornamental trees and shrubs. Preferred host plants include North and Central Florida native trees, hickory, pecan, walnut, elm, alder, willow, mulberry, oak, sweet gum, and poplar. The larvae feed in huge nests and are able to completely defoliate trees and shrubs. Affected plants usually recover. The snowbush spanworm, looks like an inchworm, is a tropical species that mainly feeds on snowbush, Brainia novosa. The larvae only grow to about an inch long, but the caterpillars are often so abundant that they will chew on plant twigs after consuming all the foliage. The yellow and black larvae hatch from salmon-colored eggs deposited on twigs by the day-flying moths, often called white-tipped black moths. These slow-flying navy blue moths with white-tipped wings and an orange thorax are an easy-to-see indicator of an infection. Finally, we have the bagworms. Several bagworm species can be found in Florida. Bagworms are called such because they spend their entire larval stage enclosed within a bag made of silk and plant debris. Female caterpillars never leave their bag. They lay eggs within their bags, and the new larvae later emerge to begin feeding on leaves. Large bagworm populations can defoliate entire shrubs or small trees. However, this rarely requires control. Not shown are 4 common species of stinging caterpillars in Florida. They cause minor damage to landscape plants, but their nettling hairs can inflict a nasty sting. Grasshoppers are common insects in Florida, where there are about 70 species. The eastern lever grasshopper, shown here, is perhaps the best known. It damages certain ornamental plants, vegetables, and is an occasional pest of citrus. They commonly defoliate amaryllis, Amazon lily, crinum, narcissus, and related plants in the family Amaryllidaceae. Among ornamental plants, they also will feed readily on oleander, butterfly weed, peregrina, Mexican petunia, and lantana. This grasshopper is very colorful as an adult. As a nymph, it is black with a distinctive yellow, orange, or red stripe. All grasshoppers are an important source of food for wildlife, especially for birds. And this is chewing mouth parts now, and you can see the damage to the leaf edges here. Immature, a nymph, mature. So a nymph tells you that it's incomplete metamorphosis. Some more chewing mouth parts are the bark and ambrosia beetles, which live peaceful lives inside dead or dying trees. The beetles help fungi reach normally inaccessible nutrients by burrowing into newly dead trees, and together they begin the process of decay in the tree. However, a few species of the bark beetles, such as the southern pine bark beetle and the red bay ambrosia beetle, carry fungus diseases that cause major damage to the forest. For the ambrosia beetle, that's the one that's getting the avocados also. They also damage landscape trees and fruit crops, avocado. Trees containing bark beetles often have sawdust down here, or sap on the outside, and ambrosia beetles push compact noodles of sawdust outside the tree. The University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Science, IFAS, has created an interesting citizen science project for master gardeners and/or kids called Backyard Bark Beetles. You can learn more at backyardbarkbeetles.org. Spider mites are piercing, sucking insects. Oh, actually, they're not insects, they're mites. They're tiny, 8-legged arthropods, more closely related to spiders than insects. Spider mites are less than a 32nd of an inch long and often have hairs along the back of their body. Their populations can build up very rapidly. They damage a diversity of plants by puncturing leaves with their piercing, sucking mouthparts. They feed primarily on the underside of the leaf, causing stippling or bleaching of the leaf surface, and may be accompanied by webbing depending on the species. Damage reduces photosynthesis and can cause premature leaf drop. Common spider mites include the two-spotted spider mite, the southern red mite, among others. Here we can see the two-spotted spider mite. There's one spot. This one you can see both spots, it looks like. And here we can see the netting, stippling damage on the leaves, and shed skins in the webbing. So now a review of activity 2. Did you catch all these mouth parts? The only ones we went over that had chewing mouth parts were the caterpillars, the grasshoppers, and the beetles. All the rest, whiteflies, aphids, lacebugs, thrips, mealybugs, spider mites, and scales, have piercing, sucking mouth parts. Now let's look at some beneficial insects and organisms. They can be predators, parasitoids, or pathogens. Predators kill and consume their prey. Parasitoids live in or on their prey, eventually killing it. And pathogens, such as viruses, fungi, bacteria, and nematodes, infect and kill organisms. Start with lady beetles. They are predators. Their larvae prey on aphids, mites, scales, mealybugs, thrips, whiteflies, small caterpillars, beetle grubs, and insect mite eggs. This large and diverse family of beetles includes over 6,000 species worldwide and 105 in Florida. They are valuable predators as larvae and adults and help control many plant pests. Adults are generally oval-shaped, have wings, and range from about 1 millimeter to 1 centimeter in length. As a defensive response, adults reflex bleed from their leg joints, which repels potential predators. Adults, larvae, and pupae are often found on or near soft-bodied prey like aphids, whiteflies, mites, and scale insects. Eggs are elongate, oval, and laid in clusters. Presence of lady beetles may indicate a pest infestation, but is a sign that biological control is at work. Common lady beetles include the multicolored Asian lady beetle and mealybug destroyer. So the eggs, the larvae, pupa, which means that it is a complete metamorphosis, and the adult. Next would be the predaceous stink bugs, again predators. The predatory stink bugs have pointed shoulders, where most harmful species have rounded shoulders. And here we can see an example of that pointed shoulder on a predaceous stink bugs, whereas this one is more rounded. There's green stink bugs, and so this is the one that damages plants. And this is a beneficial one. The predaceous one feeds on many insects, especially caterpillars and beetles. Notice the 4 dots here and the dots here, or the dots here. These are the eggs of a fly parasite. Lacewings are an important group of predatory insects that feed on a variety of plant-feeding pests. The green lacewing, Chrysopidae, adults are approximately 3/4 inch long, green, and have 4 transparent wings with lace-like veins. Adults feed on pollen or insects, while the larvae are ravenous predators of small, soft-bodied insect pests like aphids, mealybugs, and insect eggs. They have elongate soft bodies with sickle-shaped mouthparts that are used to pierce prey and extract their insides. Eggs are attached to the tip of a long hair-like stalk to prevent predation from other insects. Some green lacewing larvae pile organic debris and even the carcasses of prey onto their backs as a protective disguise, earning them the name trash bugs. So they prey on aphids, insect eggs, scale insects, mealybugs, and mites. They are most predaceous as larvae. So here are the eggs on hair-like structures, larvae attacking an aphid, picture of an adult, and here's the trash bug. Brown lacewings are less common than green lacewings and are smaller, approximately 3/8 to 5/8 of an inch long. They feed on aphids, insect eggs, scales, mealybug, and mites. And here both the adults and larvae are predaceous, and the eggs are not laid on stalks. Syrphids and hoverflies. The larvae of this large and diverse family of flies are voracious predators of a variety of plant pests, particularly aphids. They can resemble small slugs or caterpillars. The adults vary greatly in color and size, but are most often yellow with dark bands on the abdomen and about 3/8 of an inch long. Among the most skilled flyers in the insect world, syrphid flies can hover in flight for long periods of time, which lends their other common name, hoverflies. They are commonly found on flowers and may resemble wasps or bees, but cannot sting. The best way to differentiate adult syrphid flies from wasps or bees is that flies have 2 wings, short antennae, and a broad waist, whereas wasps and bees would have 4 wings. Larvae preying on an aphid and an adult. The adults consume nectar and are pollinators. Big-eyed bugs have oval bodies, silver wings, and bulging eyes. The adults are gray, black, brown, or yellow, and 1/16 to 1/8 inch long. These insects are important predators of plant-feeding pests, including chinch bugs, small caterpillars, insect eggs, and other soft-bodied insects. They stalk prey and pierce this body with their straw-like mouth parts, which they use to extract the prey's body contents. Big-eyed bugs are often mistaken for chinch bugs, However, they can be easily distinguished by their large eyes. Note the eyes here, here, and the eyes here and here. About 70 species of pirate bugs are found in North America, but the most well known is Aureus insidiosus, which is used commercially as a biological control agent. Adults are about 1/8 inch long and oval shaped with black and white wing patches. Nymphs are yellow. Nymphs, incomplete metamorphosis, are yellow, becoming a darker orange as they age. As voracious predators, they are able to control large populations of thrips, particularly western flower thrips. They also feed on spider mites, aphids, whiteflies, and other soft-bodied pests and their eggs. In the absence of prey, Aureus populations are sustained by plants such as peppers, cotton, and okra, where they feed harmlessly on pollen and plant sap. Looks like feeding on some soft scale here. All spiders are predaceous and feed on insects or other arthropods. Some are hunters, others build webs to capture their prey. Although all spiders are predatory, only a few are dangerously venomous to people, like the black widow, brown recluse. Wood spiders are among the most common predators found in the landscape. Predatory mites feed on mites that damage plants. They are very small, about 1/32 of an inch long, and have 8 legs. Many species are commercially available. Predatory mites may develop more quickly and live longer than their prey, which makes them effective predators. They are fast-moving, have fairly long legs when compared to plant-feeding mites. They are typically found on the underside of leaves, but due to their small size, are difficult to find without magnification. Parasitic wasps are diverse and abundant. This is a diverse and abundant wasp that often goes unnoticed, but are effective natural enemies of many pests. Most specialize on a single species or select group of hosts. Common targets are aphids, whiteflies, scales, leaf miners, beetle grubs, and caterpillars. The female wasps deposit eggs, an egg or eggs, in or on the body of the host, which is consumed as the wasp larvae develops. Parasitized caterpillars are often seen with many white silken cocoons attached, made by the wasp larvae that emerged from the host. Parasitized aphids, known as mummies, are easily recognized by their swollen shape and tan or golden color. Most parasitic wasps are unable or unlikely to sting humans unless directly handled. And here we see the wasp egg laying. Here we see here are the mummies. And emerging wasp larvae. You can tell if biocontrol is at work by inspecting for emergent holes. When an adult whitefly emerges, it leaves a ragged emergent hole, top left. If parasitized, the emerging parasitic wasp leaves a round hole, as we see down here. Similarly, here, a parasitic wasp deposits an egg in an aphid. The egg hatches, develops into an adult wasp, which emerges from the dead aphid in the middle here, leaving behind a circular emergence hole right here. So activity number 3, let's match these insects. So refer to activity 3 in your student manual. We're going to match insect life stages and match insect evidence. So here's the life stages. Adult grasshopper, green lacewing, whitefly. So which one of these early stages goes with this adult stage? Here we go. The adult grasshopper, the nymph grasshopper, incomplete metamorphosis. the green lacewing, and the egg on the thread. The whitefly, and the whitefly. Now, evidence with the insect. So here's the evidence, different kinds of damage, and here's the different insects. So which insect caused which damage? Looks like sooty mold. Stippling, could this be the skeletonizing? Or let's look. Here we go. This is stippling on azalea, sooty mold caused by the azalea lacebug, sooty mold on crepe myrtle caused by crepe myrtle aphids, and silver-flecked scraped foliage caused by thrips. If you have an insect problem in your landscape and you can't identify it, you could try bringing it to the plant clinic at the extension office, or you could go online, here's the address, and download this form, fill it out, follow the directions, and send that insect along with a check to the University of Florida, and they'll get back to you with an identification of the insect. Some resources for further learning, more are listed in your Master Gardener Handbook, but entomology.ufl.edu /creatures, or a book in the extension bookstore called Bug Deck. Acknowledging images, the people who actually put this PowerPoint presentation together, and Dr. Sidney Park Brown. And that completes module on entomology. Thank you.